Do you know any millionaires? Most of the ones I know are actually very low key and you couldn't tell just by looking at them. Social media actually does a terrible job at depicting what wealth really looks like. In fact, most people who are flexing luxury watches or cars are probably broke. And from reading books like The Millionaire Next Door and Baby Steps Millionaires, we learn that the majority of America's millionaires are actually living very modest lives, but there are a few subtle signs that give off a millionaire if you pay close attention. Starting with sign number 1, Costco clothes. Now, I'm not saying that most millionaires are repping Kirkland's signature across their chest, but this is just the way to say that a lot of millionaires dress pretty plain and simple. In fact, I have another YouTube channel where I interview these quiet millionaires on the street, and what I've noticed is that they look clean, they look very put together, but they're not flexing any big brands or wearing any ice that could give off someone that has riches. A lot of these quiet millionaires value other things, and they do understand that luxury brands are just a brand. It doesn't mean that the cloth that they're buying is higher quality or will last longer. The next subtle sign is that they're more likely to be driving a Camry over a Caddy. Now, I have nothing against anyone who drives a Cadillac, but a lot of quiet millionaires are folks who are not caught up in what kind of car they drive. They're more focused on utility, durability, and safety. And most of the time, these millionaires throughout their life have never bought a brand new car. In fact, they probably will buy a car that's 2 to 5 years old when someone else has already taken on that major depreciation at the beginning. In fact, Thomas J. Stanley, one of the co-authors of The Millionaire Next Door, studied thousands of millionaire families and other high net worth individuals. And what they found is that less than 1 in 4 millionaires drove a car from the current model year. So used cars seems to be the trend of a millionaire. And something on top of that is that they found most millionaires will drive cars for a longer period of time. Through one study, we learned that over 63% of Americans drive cars for 5 years or less. But yet the average life expectancy of a car in America today is 12 years old. So why are people giving up or trading or upgrading their cars when they still have more miles left to drive on it? Well, if you're trying to not be a millionaire, you would probably think that car payments are meant to be a part of your life forever. I've seen the pattern too many times from friends and family who will literally finish paying off their car, which probably took 5 to 7 years, and once that was finished, they went off and bought another brand new car just to bring on another car payment back into their life. And yes, I understand that some cars do break down or people get into accidents that can ruin the whole thing, but let's be honest here. I just think the car industry is really good at selling you the safety of a brand new car over continuing to drive your used car that's paid off but is still working. So that's why I think we can learn a lot from a quiet millionaire that can look past all the noise and realize, hey, what I'm driving works totally fine, takes me from point A to point B, and it fulfills all the needs I have, from taking my kids to soccer practice to taking us on a family trip up the East Coast. The next subtle sign of a quiet millionaire is that they have a cottage, not a castle. I'm not saying everyone needs to turn their house into a cottagecore Pinterest board, but if that's your thing, you do you. But strictly looking at quiet millionaires, they are very intentional about their housing costs. In a cottage, every inch of that space is used for a specific purpose, no more and no less. And that's exactly what we're talking about here with quiet millionaires. They buy or rent the space that is right for them, not for what the world's pressuring them to buy, and not what they pictured their dream home was when they were a teenager. If you're an adult, you already understand that housing is probably the biggest reoccurring expense for you every single month. And if that reoccurring expense takes up a huge chunk of your income, like 50% of your paycheck going towards your rent, then what kind of margin would you have left over to go into investing and saving and building true wealth? A great rule I like to follow with housing costs is keeping it less than 25% of my take-home pay. And yes, I understand that may be a stretch for people who live in the city or a really expensive suburb, but then again, it still comes down to your choice of living in a city or living in that expensive suburb, or continuing to work a job that can't support that kind of rent ratio. Like, let's take a look at the book Baby Steps Millionaires by Dave Ramsey. They did the largest study of millionaires in North America. I think it was over 20,000 of them, and they found that most millionaires live in a modest home, but they prioritize things like safety, utility, and just what they actually need. And that's kind of what we really just care about, right? We want our families to feel safe. We want to have enough space for our kids to run around and enjoy themselves. And we want to have some level of privacy with enough rooms for our kids and for the parents. And those things pretty much draw the line between what's necessary and what becomes excessive. I know a lot of times people picture millionaires as owning these mansions, and even Dave Ramsey himself, he put up his old mansion for sale recently, but he is on a completely other level, if not a billionaire already, and most millionaires are actually just people living in modest homes, and they could be your next door neighbor. The next subtle sign of a quiet millionaire is that they invest in themselves. Obviously, we know wealthy people invest, but it's not all just meme coins and real estate and the stock market. The best investment you can make is into yourself, your skills, your certifications, your licenses, and your overall competency at your job. These can all be great ways to scale up your earning potential while also being personally fulfilled. Like for me, I remember my very first big investment into myself was a financial coach training course. I knew I was doing a lot of right things with my money in college and I just wanted to help out my peers. So doing this program helped me become a better communicator, a better listener, and a better guide for people with their money. And obviously now, after starting this channel and building a whole brand out of personal finances, that initial investment has definitely snowballed into something greater than I would have ever thought. And by the way, guys, I just want to say thank you for subscribing if you have, and if you've been enjoying this video so far, make sure to like it, and let's go on to the next sign. Quiet millionaires ask a lot of questions. So one of the best ways to invest into yourself that is completely free is by asking a lot of questions. I found that most quiet millionaires are always curious, they are lifelong learners, and they never put themselves above people to think that they know everything. In fact, most quiet millionaires put themselves below people so that they're humble enough to ask questions and admit that they don't know something. Throughout the last few years, I've been able to talk to a lot of CEOs, a lot of founders, a lot of really rich people, and they're actually very chill. They have this quiet confidence about them, but it doesn't leak into arrogance. And by the way, if you're someone that likes to ask a lot of questions, we have a safe place to do that in our Frugal Rich Facebook group. It's completely free, and there's a link in the description for you to join. The next subtle sign of a quiet millionaire is that they share their knowledge. Once again, this sign isn't a physical thing, but it's something you realize as you get to know a person. I'm not talking about that broke uncle giving you financial advice at Thanksgiving. I'm talking about people who are willing to share what they've learned through experience, and they aren't trying to gatekeep their knowledge to keep you from succeeding. I think this trait is really important as well if you're trying to build generational wealth within your family. Because the sad truth, according to a study from the Williams Group, is that approximately 70% of wealth disappears from families by the second generation, and 90% disappears by the third. And this is not because the kids are blowing all that wealth on designer handbags. It's because a lot of wealthy people do not properly educate their children on how to be good with money. But a quiet millionaire, however, knows the effect of instilling the values of frugality, discipline, and patience on their children, because that's likely what made them millionaires in the first place. I think for me, as that first generation, and let me know if you are a child of immigrant parents, you don't take their hard work and their wealth building for granted. And because watching that journey of building wealth is so fresh to me in my generation, I don't take that for granted. But I think for me and the next generation, like my wife and I, when we have kids, it's gonna be up to us to teach them the same values of hard work, patience, and financial education so that they can also create this kind of wealth and freedom for themselves too. The next sign of a quiet millionaire is that they have the ability to do service for others. That is one of the most underrated benefits of financial independence, is the ability to think of others more than yourself, because you've already got yourself taken care of. And that's why this sign is one way you can distinguish a quiet millionaire. They're probably the ones stressing about finding a good gift for that baby shower, or baking a cake for a friend, or maybe going to a church event and volunteering. They just have the time and resources to give back more to the community. But before I go further, let me make something very clear. I am not saying that you have to be wealthy to be generous. I'm actually far from that idea. But anyone who has built a lot of wealth will tell you that money is something that will amplify who you currently are. So if someone's a Scrooge when they're broke, like someone that's selfish, they're just gonna become more selfish once they're rich. And on the contrary, if you see someone that's already generous, generous when they don't have much. When they do have more money, they're just going to become even more generous. The next sign that could give off a quiet millionaire is that they don't give out allowances, they only give out commissions. Now, we just talked about how quiet millionaires will educate the next generation on their finances and on the value of hard work. And one of the best ways to tie money to hard work is by linking them together through commissions and not just giving allowances for doing nothing. Now, I'm not saying this sign is a tell-all for all quiet millionaires, that they don't give allowances to their kids, but this is something that I've seen in my own personal life and that I've seen around me that has been a very effective way of helping the next generation understand the value of money. Even for me personally, I didn't get $20 for nothing just because a week passed by. I would get $20 because I mowed the lawn, or I would get $10 because I washed and detailed a car. And because of that, whenever I spent my own money, I wouldn't think about the dollar bill in my hand. I would think about the time it took to earn this dollar bill in my hand. But let me know in the comments, how did you get money growing up? Was it through allowance? Was it through commission? And what do you find is most effective? The next sign of a quiet millionaire is that they don't loan money, they gift money. Your quiet millionaires are the ones who are helping people financially, but they're not talking or thinking about it at all once it's done, because they're not expecting anything in return. And they especially don't lord it over the person they gave it to as a way to guilt them or to get something else in return. If you've ever loaned money to a friend or a family member with an expectation that they would pay it back, that created a weird transactional element in the relationship, and it probably didn't end pretty. Let's be honest here. So again, because the Frugal Rich is a community here, how do you like to be generous with finances? Leave it in the comments on your favorite way to give back. The next sign is that they are unbothered by small inconveniences. I'm not speaking for everyone, but a lot of millionaires I've come across don't really care if their steak is medium well if they asked for medium. Because for them, that steak purchase was not a big deal at all. And the juice probably ain't worth the squeeze, or the steak juice. Never mind. All I'm saying is that minor inconveniences are just that, minor inconveniences. For example, if you're going to an event downtown and you come across parking that has to be paid for, you're just probably gonna pay it for the convenience of it instead of driving 5 blocks down and walking 30 minutes just to get the free parking. A quiet millionaire probably values their time more, as well as the experience of their family, over trying to save just a few dollars. Let's rapid fire these last two. The 11th sign of a quiet millionaire is that they don't care about credits. If you're at that point of having so many assets, having a lot of cash saved up, and having your investments going crazy, then what difference would a little bit of cash back, some extra travel points, or some rewards will do to your financial situation? Not much. Quietly wealthy people probably find better activities to do than scouring the internet for the most optimal credit card. They're not looking to travel hack, they're not looking for cash back, but they do have cash in their back pocket. All right, that was some sad spoken word right there. Of course, for some people, it is just fun to do this credit card churning game or travel hacking game. Let me know in the comments. Are you someone that messes around with credit cards even though your wealth is already built up? And the 12th sign of a quiet millionaire is that they don't even think about Social Security. Social Security, of course, serves an important purpose. In fact, in 2022, it lifted 23 million Americans out of poverty. That said, it's not something that wealthy people rely on. In fact, they don't even really think about it. Whereas Social Security is quite literally designed as a form of nationalized insurance, quiet millionaires are self-insured through their own decades of plain saving and investing money. They might get a little something by the time they hit retirement, sure, but it's just whipped cream on top of all of their hard work prior. And by the way, if you're not currently a millionaire, or maybe you're in the thick of your financial journey just trying to get some traction, here are a few ways you can start saving thousands of dollars a year. Give it a click and I'll see you guys over there. Peace.